का कोहिनूर रहा नहीं, हमसे बिछड़ गया है।
Mr. Tata was really somebody who was very, very humble, very graceful.
Ratan Tata was a great man, a great mind, and a great son of India.
India will miss him greatly.
He was a perfect gentleman and perfect Indian.
Growing up, this day will ever come, where I'd be 6 inches away from someone I feel not every Indian, but every human being ever born and to be born should take inspiration from.
Thank you for putting me at ease. I've been as nervous about sitting 6 inches from you as you have been.
Whenever the economic history of modern India is written, I would feel that a full volume will not be enough to describe his achievements.
I'd like to be remembered as a person who made a difference. Not anything more, not anything less.
Ratan Tata, the man who took India Inc. to the world, the philanthropist who led a modest lifestyle and one of India's tallest business leaders, has passed at the age of 86. He was accorded a state funeral in Mumbai today. We will recount the life, times and legacy of Ratan Tata on India Business Hour. Here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. TCS misses estimates in the second quarter, even as revenues rise over 2%, margins miss the mark and profits contract by over 1%. Bulls maintain the winning momentum on Dalal Street, even as the sensex and the nifty end with marginal gains. Equity mutual fund inflows declined by 10% in September, but monthly SIP inflows crossed 24,000 crore rupees for the first time. The government seeks a revival plan from Vodafone Idea for the next 4 to 5 years before approving a bank guarantee exemption for spectrum acquisition. The debt-ridden telco was scheduled to submit bank guarantees in tranches starting September this year. That's a CNBC Awaaz exclusive. Israeli forces continue to pound Beirut in northern Gaza. UN says 2 peacekeepers were injured after Israeli forces shot at them in Lebanon. The UN calls it a grave violation of international law. At least 4 people dead as Hurricane Milton slams the coast of Florida. In the U.S., more than 3 million people are without power as the storm leaves a trail of destruction. Tennis legend Rafael Nadal announces his retirement. He will play his last match in the Davis Cup this November. Nadal won 22 Grand Slams in a career that began in 2002. Legendary leader Ratan Tata, who transformed the Tata Group into a global behemoth during his over 2 decades as chairman, was accorded a state funeral today. A philanthropist who led a modest lifestyle, an animal lover and a startup enthusiast who personally invested in over 40 companies, Ratan Tata died at the age of 86. Tributes have been pouring in from across the country and the world. Top industrialists, including Reliance chairman Mukesh Ambani, Tata Sons chairman N. Chandrasekharan, Aditya Birla Group chairman Kumaramanglam Birla, paid their respects at Mumbai's NCPA, where Tata's mortal remains were kept. Politicians across the spectrum hailed Tata's contribution to India. Prime Minister Modi tweeted calling him a visionary leader, a compassionate soul and an extraordinary human being. Home Minister Amit Shah, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, Maharashtra's Chief Minister Shinde and top state leaders visited the NCPA to pay their last respects. A special friend of Ratan Tata, his pet, Goa, paid homage to him. A dog rescued by Tata himself, Goa has free access to Bombay House, the Tata Group headquarters. A part of Bombay House was dedicated to a kennel in 2018.
टाटा समूह का नेतृत्व करना ही अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ी बात होती है, परंतु उन्होंने टाटा समूह का नेतृत्व ऐसे समय में संभाला जब टाटा समूह को अनेक प्रकार के परिवर्तन करना जरूरी था और धैर्यपूर्वक बारीकी से अध्ययन करके टाटा समूह के सारे उद्योगों को और काम करने की पद्धति को दोनों को उन्होंने परिवर्तित किया और पहले की तरह आज भी टाटा समूह भारत के उद्योग जगत में एक ध्रुव तारा बनकर है।
I was here to pay my respects to the departed soul. There are two things which stand out about Sri Ratan Tata. The first is that he was a true visionary, a great visionary. The second thing was that he was a strong believer in ethics in corporate governance. I think whenever the economic history of modern India is written, I would feel that a full volume will not be enough to describe his achievements. A truly towering personality, a great son of India, a phenomenal person. May his soul rest in peace.
I got to spend a fair amount of time with him, and he was also a partner with us. I was on his board. So I would describe him as being very magnanimous. He was a humanitarian, he was a philanthropist, and I think that part of his legacy is the most enduring.
Right, and what would your two or three top qualities that you would say everyone should take away from Mr. Ratan Tata?
I think he had this larger purpose of giving back to the country, of connecting with the common man, and both of this, I think, makes his contribution that much more special.
Sorry, one last thing. What biggest business lesson that you would have probably seen through your illustrious career, his illustrious career, that you think really stood out for you?
I think just working, building assets for the country and doing it for the long term, right, and doing it consistently.
Right.
Ratan Tata really brought India together in terms of India's industry. He created a vision for India to move forward, and that's the respect he gained amongst the entire industry. India will miss him greatly. He was somebody who built a strong and positive brand for India.
Well, tributes pouring in for Ratan Tata. Industry veteran Deepak Parekh has called Ratan Tata a giant of a human being. Parekh also said Tata's humility and the way he led a simple life set him apart from other business leaders in India. Take a look.
We've had a lot of very prominent business leaders, people working for change. What made Mr. Ratan Tata stand, tall and far apart from the rest?
His humility, his approach to any individual. His tone would never change whether he's talking to a very rich person or a very, very poor person. His humbleness, his concern for poverty India has, and and his cool temperament. I have been with Indian Hotels for many, many years, and he was the chairman, and I don't remember a single board meeting where he's lost his temper or he's talked in a louder voice, despite mistakes being made, despite results not being good, and despite number of hurdles the company went through. He never lost his temper. He never spoke louder. It's the same tone of his voice never changed.
Anything that corporate that you want to speak about him?
He never missed an opportunity. They have had many, many consultants of all types. But his mind was very clear which businesses we should stay. We should not be on the periphery of any business. Unless we are number 1, 2, or 3, we should not remain in the business. And he endured this thought of his, and he pursued this vision amongst his senior colleagues also. And that was one of the reasons why the smaller businesses were sold or they were amalgamated into larger units.
Society over profitability, that's something that the man stood for. And that's something that we don't talk about on a day-to-day basis because of the stock market. But run us through a few of those takeaways on that parameter.
That a man could work not for his own profit, but really entirely for community.
No, he always said he had no money. He always joked he had no money. And so many times I've heard from him during these investment commission meetings that he has literally no money to invest anywhere, his own personal money. And he led a very simple life. You know, we used to have lunches and dinners together with chief ministers. Eating was very frugal. He never sort of ate. He never drank. He was not fond of drinking. So he very simple habits. You'll be amazed that a giant of a man has such simple habits and temperament. You really can't find people of this type anymore anywhere.
Well, a giant of a man, that's Deepak Parekh. In our Gopalakrishnan, former board member Tata Sons, spoke about the evolution of Ratan Tata after he took charge of the conglomerate in 1991, 23 years ago. He spoke about how, while he was a risk taker, he was always cautious in his decisions, always very prepared to have a parachute, almost akin to being a paratrooper, in Mr. Gopalakrishnan's words. His enduring memory of Tata is his ability to stand in the face of crushing setbacks.
Well, you know, we are all leaders who are men of the moment. When we are put into a situation, we rise. So it is true that, at least this is before the time I joined Tata, from 1962 when he came back from the US at the request of his grandmother, he had initially a tough time being taken seriously. Because it is not an automatic, although people call Tata a family-managed business, it's not a family-managed business in that sense. In a family-managed business, the next gen gets automatic awqat, you know, to use an Urdu word. But that's not the case in Tata's for sure. And so he went through his own tribulations, which he has described, and I wasn't in the group at that time. And it is true that perhaps in the last few years of JRD, who was a wonderful leader Tata was fortunate to have, but in the last few years, things might have made things a bit centripetal. And I suspect the situation he found himself in 1992 was the same situation Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel found himself in 1947 or 46, when there were so many princely states, everybody wanted to make his own decision where they would go, and he said India must be united. And what I was privileged to observe and in somewhat later years participate in is how he welded and put the whole thing together, which required some very special skills of top leadership of the future. First is the ability to listen. Second is the ability not to go in with a decision in your head, but to evolve a decision out of the discussion. And the third thing is how to manage contradiction and yet move forward.
The evolution of Ratan Tata, the man who many would argue took bold bets, perhaps ahead of his time, whether it was the Tetley acquisition or the audacious Chorus and JLR acquisitions, the decision to go in for joint ventures and bring multinationals into the fold across different businesses, from consumer businesses to the defense business. That side of the evolution, if you could shed light on how you saw that evolution take place.
Everybody thinks he was quite a Rambo guy and he took big, bold, hairy decisions. And I can understand from the outside it would look like that. But having been inside with him, he was a very cautious person. It is exactly the opposite of what people think. Because he was like a paratrooper. A paratrooper would never jump from 10,000 feet without his parachute being fixed. Right? If you look at a paratrooper as a layperson, you don't know which parachute is opening when, and you just assume it will all work. But it is not so. Paratroopers spend a lot of time. So he had the equity base of investment in companies, particularly TCS had taken off. That gave him the strength. Had TCS not had its IPO and provided what it did, the parachute wouldn't have been there to open. And that provided him the courage to think big, He had the courage to think big, but his own spirits were very cautious.
The ability to stand in the face of crushing setbacks, that's former Tata Sons board member R. Gopalakrishnan. But what does Ratan Tata's demise mean for the Tata Trust and the plan hereon? Vivek Iyer is standing by with the details. A very unique structure that is in operation and has worked for decades now, Vivek.
Well, that's right. Well, the unfortunate device actually has left quite a big void, and this particular void will be felt especially in two important entities as far as the Tata Group is concerned. The first one, of course, will be the Tata Sons, which owns majority shareholding in the listed companies, and number two of the important Tata Trust that actually hold significant stake. We've done a deep dive into how exactly does the shareholding pattern across, the unlisted or the private entities of the Tata Group pan out, and what is the kind of impact that you could see as far as the listed universe of the Tata Group stocks is concerned. First up, let's understand what is Tata Sons. Tata Sons is the principal investment holding company and promoter of the Tata companies. And in Tata Sons, 66% of the equity capital of Tata Sons is actually being held by philanthropic trusts. Now, Ratan Tata was the chairman of the Tata Trust, two important Tata Trusts, that is Sir Ratan Tata Trust as well as Sir Dorabji Tata Trust. The chairperson here was Sir Ratan Tata. Now, these two trusts together own a little over 51.5% stake in Tata Sons. Now, going forward, what is going to be important, given the fact that there is a void as far as the chairperson is concerned, there will now need to be a voting to decide who exactly becomes the next chairperson. 13 trustees in total exist across these two trusts, where 5 individuals are actually common trustees. Who are the 5 individuals? Former Defence Secretary Vijay Singh, automobile industrialist Venu Srinivasan, Ratan Tata's half-brother and Trent chairman Noel Tata. Remember, Noel Tata is married to Alu Mistry, the daughter of Palanji Mistry, as well as she is the sister of Cyrus Mistry. Apart from that, businessman Maili Mistry as well as lawyer Darius Kambata are the 5 members in common across both of the trusts. Now, the way forward, like we mentioned, clarity needs to emerge on the next chairperson of the Tata Trust. Chairperson elected generally is through the majority consent amongst the trustees. Now, looking at the list of companies where Tata Sons holds stake, remember these stakes are quite significant. Amongst the top 4-5 key names, almost 71.5% stake in TCS, over 40% stake in Tata Motors, Trent, they have over 32% stake, Tata Power, over 45% stake. In total, in the listed universe, Tata Sons actually controls a little over 16 lakh crore in listed group Tata companies. So that's the kind of impact, and that's why this particular development will be very key to track as to who exactly will be the next chairperson of the Tata Trust.
Vivek, many thanks for joining us. Well, that is the unique structure there as far as the Tata Group is concerned. Now, Rajiv Bajaj paid tribute to Ratan Tata, recalling how Tata Motors and his company Bajaj Auto almost tried to forge together a collaboration for the nano car project. Take a look.
I've met Mr. Tata obviously fleetingly many a times, but in depth once, I think about 15 years back, sometime in 2008, 2009. This is the time when Tatas were contemplating making the Nano, and I was thinking about our quadricycle, the Qute. And something just inspired me to go across and meet a potential competitor who was my father's age. I sought a meeting. I was granted one. I went to Tata House one evening at about 4 o'clock. And I must share with you what happened there. I waited for him in his office. And when he came to me, for the first 10 minutes, all he did was vent actually. He told me one by one about 15 instances all through school when my father had bullied him on different occasions. And in the classroom, even in the bathroom, and I was just speechless. I didn't know what to do, and I have to this date carried a diary to schedule my day for every year. So I made a careful note of all that in my diary, and all my 35 diaries are with me in my office, so I'm sure I can still find my notings in this regard. So I wrote all this down, And when I came back, I sat in front of my father and I said to him, this is what Mr. Tata says about you. And my father said, oh, you know how my father was. He just waved his hand and he said, this is all rubbish or something to that effect. But I told him word for word, and the actual words Mr. Tata had used were the exact words that typical of my father. So I knew that Mr. Tata was 100% correct.
Well, anecdotes there coming in from business leaders. Ratan Tata's legacy goes well beyond the businesses he built. After retiring, Mr. Tata supported more than 40 startups, lending his wisdom and his capital to budding entrepreneurs. We spoke with some of those startup founders about their first meetings with Ratan Tata and the impact that he made.
I remember my first meeting with him was intermediated by someone we knew in common, and they just told me that an HNI in Mumbai wants to meet you, and they didn't tell me the name till the day before the meeting. And when I landed in Mumbai at night and the meeting was the next morning, they said it's Mr. Tata. You can imagine the kind of sleep I got that night. And when I showed up at his office the next day, he was running about 5-7 minutes late. And when he came, my heart just stopped because I'd only seen him on TV and on newspapers and magazines, never seen him in person. And the first thing he did was he just profusely apologized for being late. And I was just wondering, why is he apologizing? He was like 5 minutes late, it doesn't matter. And instead of sitting behind a big desk or a big table, he pulled the visitor's chair and literally just sat right next to me.
I recall reaching his office. This was the Elphinstone building in Fort, and I expected a rather large office for somebody of his stature, but it was a humble, perhaps 1,500 or 2,000 square foot office on the second floor, a couple of employees and then himself. We met him. I think we shared our vision and the idea of Urban Company with him for about 45 to 50 minutes. I remember him patiently listening throughout that pitch and not interrupting at any point in time. Then he spoke words which I still very carefully remember. He said, Abhiraj, Varun and Raghav, you are building something that India needs. Just make sure that you keep the quality really, really high and the rest will follow.
So the first impression was of a man who looked at you equally, who treated you equally, who was present, who was kind. And over the years, the more I got to know him, I realized that what a man he was. And I've written about it, but one thing that I would like through your channel, everyone to know, very small thing, that he had a very bad knee pain and I'd gone for a video interview and I was just, after the conversation, I was getting up and going out. And I knew he was in pain, but he got up to see me off to the door. And I said, why, Mr. Tata, are you doing this? I can go. And he said that, a woman comes to my house and I'm brought up like that. Like, I cannot not go and see you off to the door.
Well, more on India Business Hour. The Bulls maintained their winning momentum on the Lal Street. Despite a range-bound trading session, the sensex and the nifty closed with marginal gains. The nifty bank index ended with gains of over 1%. Mid-caps continue to underperform, with the index ending marginally in the red. Earnings season has kicked off, and it's kicked off with TCS, which has missed estimates in Q2. Now, even as revenues have risen, margins have missed the mark and profits have contracted by over 1%. Rima is standing by to take us through the highlights of TCS, which has kick-started earnings season. Rima.
TCS reports a margin miss in the current quarter. EBIT margins at 24.1% fall short of street expectations of 24.9%, and it also marks the second consecutive quarter where margins have come down. In Q4 of FY24, margins were at 26%. They came down to 24.7% in Q1 due to wage hike, and this quarter there is a further decline to 24.1%. This miss in margins is driving a drop in the company's profitability, so net profits are down 1.1% quarter on quarter, again lower than the CNBC-TV18 poll. But that's on on margins. On the top line, on growth per se, growth is very much intact. So the company's dollar revenue has gone up by 2.2% sequentially, largely in line, in fact, slightly better than the CNBC-TV18 poll of 2%. But here the growth is driven by largely India. Now, India is just 9% of the company's top line, but it's seen a 21% quarter-on-quarter increase in revenues, and it's doubled practically on a year-on-year basis. So nearly 70% of the incremental revenue is driven by India, and here we know the company is executing the large BSNL deal. In fact, it appears that this BSNL deal, which has contributed to the company's top line, could have also hurt the company's margins. North America has been under pressure, so that's down 3.5%, so that's disappointing. Though Europe and UK, have showcased growth. The good thing in the numbers is that BFSI continues to show recovery. Remember, last quarter we saw the early signs of a BFSI recovery. It's further strengthened. So quarter on quarter, the financial sector growth has come in at 1.9%. So that is a positive. Deal wins largely steady sequentially. Hiring has continued for the second consecutive quarter, and attrition has been stable at 12.3%. So all in all, good top-line growth driven by the India business, but margins are a bit disappointing, and they have missed street expectations.
Rima, many thanks. That's TCS for you. Now, the telecom department has sought a revival plan from Vodafone Idea before approving its bank guarantee waiver. Sources say that the telecom department has sought a 4 to 5 year roadmap from the cash-strapped telecom company. The telco was scheduled to submit bank guarantees in tranches starting September this year. The big international story is Israeli forces continue to pound Beirut and northern Gaza. The UN has said that 2 peacekeepers were injured after Israeli forces shot at them in Lebanon and has called it a grave violation of international law. At least 4 people have died after Hurricane Milton slammed the coast of Florida. In the U.S., more than 3 million people have been left without power after the storm left a trail of destruction. Tennis legend Rafael Nadal has announced his retirement. He will play his last match in the Davis Cup this November. Nadal has won 22 Grand Slams in a career that began in 2002. He's only second to Novak Djokovic, who's won 24 Grand Slams. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18 on a day that the nation says goodbye to Ratan Tata.